back to the 7th episode of my Fixing American Democracy series. We are well in the fight to reimagine American democracy and our elections for generations to come that will ultimately create a government that's truly by, of, and for the people. And in this 7th episode, actually, this is going to be a two-part. This is going to be another two-part, kind of like what when I talked about reforming our United States House of Representatives when it came to uncapping and mixed member proportional, I explained some of my solutions in episode. I think it was episode 4, where I talked about uncapping the House and also mixed member proportional. And in the second part, which was episode 5, I also talked about. I also showed you of how it will all work. I laid out my vision of how mixed member proportional is going to be installed, of how the Hamilton methods all used. I showed you everything. I showed you the cube root rule in episode 5. I showed you everything about that. So this is kind of like this a little bit with episode 7 and then episode 8 when it comes out. I decided to split into 2 parts simply because if you may notice, there's been a couple of pushes in several states, which is called the National Popular Vote Interstate Combat, that simply wants to abolish the Electoral College. So, and some of these states are Maryland, New Jersey, Illinois, Washington, Massachusetts, the District of Columbia, Vermont, California, Rhode Island, the state of New York, Connecticut, Colorado, Delaware, New Mexico, and Oregon. And I have to say is, I'm actually, I used to be for abolishing the Electoral College, but after watching the Safeguard and Electoral College story, I recommend anyone watching it because it helps you explain, it helps you completely understand the idea of why the Electoral College was created in the first place. And I recommend anyone to watch it. It's actually currently on Amazon Prime. If you guys want to watch it, I will leave a link to the documentary in the description below or in the comment section below if you guys are interested in watching it. But not to get off topic here, in episode 7 in part 1, as the title you see right now, is I will be listing out my reasons why we should preserve the Electoral College, and this will be the first part. And in the second part, which is episode 8, I will be talking about refining and my reforms on how we should refine and reimagine the Electoral College to make it more modernized for the 21st century. And before I begin to jump in to my reasoning in part 1, I actually wanted to when episode 8 and part 2 of the video where I'll be talking about reforming the Electoral College, I wanted to I really want my viewers to participate in episode 8 part 2, and so I actually put together a Google form where where you guys will participate. It's essentially a mock U.S. presidential election where you guys will vote, and actually adopted more of a preferential voting thing. So you would vote for whoever your first choice pick is. Like mine would be Tulsi Gabbard, Jesse Ventura, Bill Walker as my 3rd choice, Donald Trump as my 4th choice, and Joe Biden. And you have to fill out everything. But I wanted to give more power to you, have you guys participate in this process, because I think I just want to increase more viewer participation in my videos and just let you guys have fun with this one, and you guys can feel like you are participating in fixing American democracy for generations, and I mean generations to come. And I will leave in this Google form. I will leave the description. I will link this at the end of this video. The link to this Google form will be in the description of this video below. As well, I will also post it in the comment section as well, so you guys can check it out. Just the one thing I really want to ask you is just please only vote once. I want to keep this fair and simple. I want to keep it fair and equal to all people. so everyone has a voice in this Google form. But I hope you guys have fun and in voting for whoever, in voting for like any candidate. But keep in mind, this is just a mock U.S. presidential election, and this is going to help me. I'm going to use all the results, and I'm going to use this to help me further explain of how my modernized electoral college system will work. And I explained this before in the video, but I want to keep promoting this electoral college system and helping and gaining it increasing popularity with this type of system, so I can so it can one day become so this modernized electoral college system does become a reality in our country. But I do hope you guys will enjoy voting and participating in this mock U.S. presidential election, and let's begin the video, shall we? So as you may know from the beginning of the video, Fixing American Democracy Series, Episode 7, Why We Should Preserve the Electoral College, Part 1. And the reason why I wanted to make this video, and I already explained this, is because there's been major pushes to abolish the Electoral College. People say it's undemocratic. People think whoever wins the most votes or who wins a majority of the vote should be elected president of the United States. Well, I have strong reasoning why we should preserve the Electoral College, why we should protect it. And the first part of the reasoning is America's not a democracy. And I know I maybe sound like a complete hypocrite because this is supposed to be an episode of Fixing American Democracy, right? Why am I saying that America's not a democracy? Do I just hate democracy? No, I don't say that. I don't hate democracy, because I think everyone should participate in our democratic institutions and elections. But the reason why I say America is not a democracy, because the U.S. Constitution doesn't establish a democracy. It establishes self-government to protect the individual rights and liberties of the American people. And I have a lot of examples to prove this. For instance, the Bill of Rights, the 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights. That is flatly anti-democratic. It goes against it actually goes against majority rule, because the Bill of Rights says we don't care how big your majority is, you can't confiscate people's guns. We don't care how big your majority is, you can't establish a national church. We don't care how big your majority is, you can't turn into a private group that wants to outlaw politics and say that wants to influence politics. I'm sorry about that. That wants to influence politics and say we're going to outlaw you altogether. And it's one of those things why the American Constitution is at odds with democracy. And people say, why our Constitution is at odds with democracy. If something what the majority of the people want is to interfere with the rights of a minority. And I just want to say, people who are pro-democratic, who are pro-democracy, which I am for sure, but I'm also pro protecting the individual liberties and rights of the American people, of protecting everyone's right that's protected under the 10 amendments towards the Bill of Rights, protecting everyone's individual rights, their right to bear arms, their right to express themselves in public, and their right to exercise their freedom of religion. I'm all for that as well. And if the American Constitution is going to be at odds with democracy sometimes, and the majority is not going to get what they want in our federal republic all the time, then I'm completely for that. I'm for it, because we should always protect the individual rights and liberties of the American people. We need to protect the individual rights so the minority doesn't get oppressed by the ultimate majority. And as well, people who are and to add on to this, people who are pro-democracy, I want you guys to. The one thing I've learned is, if you guys remember Stephen A. Douglas, he's one of the guys that he was a former senator of Illinois. He ran against Abraham Lincoln in the Illinois Senate race, and he was also a presidential candidate in the 1860 presidential election. And Stephen A. Douglas, he was a firm believer in we the people. He was a firm believer in democracy. He was a firm believer in allowing, believed, and he firmly believed that it was up to the people in every state to cast the majority vote whether or not they wanted slavery and not have slavery. And this is a great example to why if you're those people that believe that America we should influence more, we should have more and more democracy in our country, just remind yourself, Stephen A. Douglas, you're also like Stephen A. Douglas in a way, because you are also a firm believer in democracy. You are a firm believer in we the people. That's what Stephen A. Douglas also believed in. But he was completely wrong on the whole slavery argument, because slavery was immoral. It was wrong because you're interfering with the rights of a minority. And it's one of the reasons why America is not a democracy, because our Constitution, like I'm going to repeat myself yet again, our Constitution establishes self-government to protect the liberties of the American people, to protect their individual rights. And if the majority of the people in one state want to impose slavery on one group of the people, then that's wrong. It's unconstitutional. And if it's undemocratic, so be it. Because I'm gonna step down, and our country should step into that and say, no, we're not going to allow you to enslave people because they're interfering with their rights to the right to life, liberty, and to the pursuit of happiness that is spelled out in the United States Constitution. And that's one of the reasons why America is not a democracy, because how do I put it? Every American, like as one person once said, all Americans have to decide, do we value democracy more or do we value individual rights more? And the answer into our Constitution is that we value individual rights more than democracy. Democracy is a great process, but it's a process. It's not a purpose. And but lastly, just think about so many times when the majority doesn't get, like in our federal republic, the majority does get what they want sometimes. Usually, they should get what they want most of the time, but there will be mechanisms installed in our Constitution that will that will frustrate the majority of Americans. We see that in presidential elections because the Electoral College, coincidentally, my video, the Electoral College will sometimes be at odds with a popular vote. This is there to protect the liberties of the American people, to protect the liberties of the minority. And it's one of the reasons why America is not a democracy. As well, we also see that in Supreme Court cases from time to time, and we also see that when the Senate installs legislation. The majority generally gets its way in our federal union, but not always. And it's one of the reasons, and one of the reasons why we should preserve the Electoral College, because America is not a democracy. Period. Our Constitution does not establish a democracy because we value protecting the individual rights and liberties of the American people over democracy, because individual liberties and rights will always be at odds with democracy. And my second reason, Electoral College is all about federalism. Period. States are their own individual sovereigns. The federal government cannot tell them what to do, and it's important. It's an important check on the powers of the federal government. It's an important check on the power of the federal government. The Electoral College is there to decentralize the power of the federal government, and it forces it down into the states. States run elections. The state Republican Party and the state Democratic Party from California will hold their conventions in their states, and if their presidential nominees or presidential electors, and if their presidential nominee wins that state, they get to cast all their electoral votes for their presidential nominee. And it's all about federalism. And think about it like this way. Think of the World Series. Think about the World Series in baseball. It's not about who wins the most runs in 7 games. It's effectively who wins the most games. And the same logic applies to the Electoral College. It's not about who wins the most votes, it's who wins the most states. And how do we win? And how do we? And how do we? And how do candidates win the most states? They win it by winning the highest. They win it by receiving the highest percentage of the vote in the state, winning the most votes. So the Electoral College is a democratic process. It's one person, one vote. It's just at the state level. It just decentralizes the power of the federal government. Your vote does count in the Electoral College. Your vote is equal. And your vote is equal. It contributes to whoever wins their state. And basically, the Electoral College is not one big national vote. It's broken into pieces. And how you put those pieces together is how the president, I'm going to get off topic here. It's broken into pieces. It's broken up into 51 individual presidential elections. And the states are the ones that and the states are the ones that hold their popular vote elections. And the people who are for abolishing the Electoral College, more democracy, who just wants to believe that the winner who wins the national popular vote should be elected president. Well, guess what? You are going against what the founders wanted. You are tearing apart state lines, and the federal government is going to have to take charge in presidential elections, because right now, actually, based on federalism, every state is different, and that's what the Electoral College does. It recognizes that all states are different in the presidential election, which is true because in the United States of America, all the 50 states, they're not all of our American citizens in every state. They're not monolithic. They're different. They have different cultures, different values, and that's why we have federalism. That's why we have the Electoral College. It's there to protect all people's rights in all states, and it's why we have the Electoral College as well. And people who are praising the national popular vote interstate compact and people who want to abolish the Electoral College, just think about it this way. It's only going to lead to more power. The federal government is going to have to take charge in presidential elections. You're increasing more power and you're increasing more influence by the federal government to take more charge, to have more power in the federal election, because you're going to need one national election law standard for the entire country. And because under a national popular vote, if we're just going to use the same federalism, it's going to create a whole bunch of chaos in presidential elections, and as well, you're going against what the founders wanted. And the founders they were all about federalism. They wanted to decentralize the power of the federal government and to say states run elections. States are in charge. They're in charge of election rules, and they're in charge of holding 51 popular vote elections for president, and not just one. And that's another big reason why we should keep the Electoral College, because it's all about federalism. Let's think about it this way: federalism is simply the balance of power between state and local. It's essentially the balance of power between the federal, state, and local government, and it's simply the balance of power between the federal and state and local government. For instance, states are much more competent to create their own educational system, build their bridges, and harden their infrastructure, far better than a federal government to be responsible. States are much more competent to build their bridges, create their own educational system, create their own healthcare systems, and harden their infrastructure. And as well, they're much more competent at holding their own popular vote elections for president, for House, and for Senate. They are much more competent to do that. But they are much less incompetent, but they are much less weaker, but they are less powerless, but they are not that really powerful to conduct foreign policy, building armies and building navies. that's far better for federal government to be responsible for, because the federal government is much more competent at building armies, building navies, and building and conducting foreign policy. That is the federal government's domain, foreign policy. And that's essentially the balance between the federal, state, and local government. And it's why we have the Electoral College, because and people say the Electoral College is not a democratic process and your vote doesn't count. It does count. Your vote does count in the Electoral College. Your vote is created equal. It's only created equal to the people that live in your state. It contributes to the person who wins your state overall in a presidential election. And it's all about who wins the most states who ultimately becomes the next president. And it's why we should keep the Electoral College, because it preserves our founders' ideal of federalism. And just abolishing the Electoral College is you're breaking apart state lines, you're increasing the power of the federal government, and the federal government is going to have much more influence and power in our presidential elections if you guys want to abolish the national popular vote, abolish the Electoral College and replace it with a national popular vote. As well, like another grand reason why we should keep the Electoral College is that it forces all presidential candidates to put together a national coalition to be president of the United States. And this is simply true. It forces every candidate. You can't just win the presidential election with just one popular state. You have to put together diverse groups. You may be unified on a certain principle, but you may not be so unified on other principles. But it was a system that allowed for political competition, while instead it allowed for political competition. While in the meantime you're not dividing people, and as well, and it forces every presidential candidate to make the rounds everywhere, to bring their message to all regions of the country, from California to Louisiana to Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Florida, Texas, New Mexico, Georgia. It forces all of them to bring a national coalition from every vote of the country. And if we're going to abolish the Electoral College, guess what's going to happen? Candidates, you're now going to be chasing a few ideas in the most populated areas of the country, because as Andrew Yang, as former Democratic presidential candidate and New York City mayor candidate, once said, because your incentives are the campaign only in really big media markets, because they're trying to get more people per time unit, and those people are going to speak the loudest, the most, and that's why you're going to influence the people in the most popular areas of the country are going to have more to say in our elections, and that's not right at all, because our back to the whole purpose of the Constitution is that we value individual rights and liberties we value liberty in protecting those individual rights of a minority, making sure everyone has a chance to govern a bit on the issues that's most salient to them. And it's one of the reasons, and it's why, and what backs up my point, why presidential candidates are forced to put together, and why presidential candidates have to put together a national coalition from all regions, from all states, to be elected president, because the Electoral College is what pulls all the states together to form a chief executive, and it's why we have the Electoral College. And the last example is that it rewards political parties to expand their map and build a bigger coalition. And think about it. I'm talking to you, Democrats. If you are the people that believe that we should abolish the Electoral College, then that's so stupid in my opinion, and that's completely so stupid, because you want to encourage more democracy. No, I'm not. That's just so stupid, because why erase completely dismantle a system where it actually rewarded your political party? Because, like as the title on the slide as said, the Electoral College rewards political parties that expand their map and build a bigger coalition. Think about Beto O'Rourke in the U.S. running for the U.S. Senate seat, running for Ted Cruz's Senate seat in 2018. Think about what happened in Georgia in 2020. Think about all that. You know why you know why Democrats, you were able to make Texas, you were able to put Texas and Georgia in play? It's because you focused on party building in each of the 50 states. You employed a 50-state strategy, and you know what? A 50-state strategy works because a party that's able to compete across all 50 states and able to put more states in play will win more. And you should be celebrating why we should, and you should be the ones protecting the Electoral College, protecting its institutions, and because you did a great job at expanding your map and building a bigger coalition, so you can win more states in the Electoral College. And the Electoral College is more important to you, is important to you as Democrats. The Electoral College is more important to you. It's just as important as the Republican Party as well. It's just as important for all parties. If Republicans just play catch up with you guys and even third parties to employ a 50-state strategy and focus on party building in each of the 50 states and building up the party apparatus in their parties in the opposition party states, so they can put more states in play. Because it's good for America when all parties employ a 50-state strategy. It's good for America when all parties expand the map and build a bigger coalition. Because and it will ultimately reward any party who will constantly keep expanding the map, who will always keep reaching out to new voters and building a bigger coalition. And you should be, the Democrats should be applauding themselves that they flipped Georgia, that they flipped the two Georgia Senate seats, they flipped the two Arizona Senate seats, and flipped Arizona and Georgia in the presidential election. They should be applauding themselves because they worked so hard at flipping those states from red to blue, and it goes to show that a 50-state strategy does work. Now the Republicans have to play catch up with the Democratic Party and focus on party building and focus on building up the party apparatus in blue states. Because once again, the Electoral College forces all political parties to constantly keep probing their states, expanding their map, and seeing what states they can pull into their coalition. And as I once said, the Electoral College is able to pull all the states together to form to elect a chief executive that will be that will represent all Americans, not just people in West Virginia, not just people in California, not just people in South Carolina, but to represent all Americans and in all 50 states. Because it rewards a political party that expands their map and builds a bigger coalition. I'm talking to you, Beto O'Rourke. I'm talking to you, Texas Democrats. I'm talking to you, Stacey Abrams. I'm talking to you, Georgia Democrats. You guys did it. You worked your butts off, and you should be applauding the successes what the Electoral College brought to you as a party. And now that will encourage the Republicans, and I really hope Republicans do this. They start taking a page out of you and expanding their map, building a bigger coalition, and building out the party apparatus in blue states like my home state of California, like the state of Illinois and New York. Because one thing I've learned is voters are not easily won over. And I think honestly in future elections from 2021 to 2022, 2024, I believe more states will be in play. Because of what we're seeing right now when it comes to the recall election in California, what we're seeing in New York, and what we're seeing in Texas, I believe there's going to be many, many more battleground states for decades to come. And it's why we should keep the Electoral College, because one, it rewards the political party that expands their map and builds a bigger coalition. As well, it forces all presidential candidates to put together a national coalition to be elected president of the United States. It's all about federalism and decentralizing the power of the federal government to recognize that all states are different. To recognize all states are different. It pushes power out of the federal government, out of Washington, D.C., into the states. States run elections, and it's all about in your vote. It does count in the Electoral College. It contributes to whoever wins your state. And if you live in West Virginia, your vote is equal to the citizens of West Virginia. If you live in Wyoming, your vote is equal to the citizens that live in Wyoming. If you live in California, your vote is equal to the citizens that live in California, and so on. And ultimately is the fact that America is not a democracy. We value individual rights and liberties of the American people. We protect we're all about protecting the individual rights and making sure the majority doesn't interfere with the rights of a minority. I'm talking to you, Stephen A. Douglas. I'm talking to so many other people who are for democracy, who are for democratic institutions. Do you really want just majority rule where the majority can't interfere with the rights of the minority? Because the majority will do that. They will absolutely do that. And the minority will keep getting oppressed. And that is why America shouldn't be a democracy. We should always value individual rights and liberties of the American people. And it's why we have the Electoral College to preserve our self-government, to protect the rights of the American people. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share your comments down below. And what do you think about my reasoning? Do you agree and disagree with it? And tell me why in the comment section below, because we can all be agents of change that will fundamentally reimagine the promise of America for generations, and I mean generations to come. And as well, don't forget to participate in this poll. And you know what? I will be participating in this poll because I'm gonna be voting with you guys. And I'm going to be so excited to use this election result in my 8th episode and in the second part where I'll be talking about reforming and modernizing the Electoral College system to make it more fair for everyone, to make it to be able to better reflect the popular vote overall. But once again, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this video. And until next time, guys, this is the Young Centrist, and I am out.